convicted of impersonating Julian Assange, and he managed to steal £50,000 or dollars from WikiLeaks. Sigurdur Thordarson is a con artist. He's a con artist with serious psychological problems. But the United States has sunken to this level to try and convict Julian Assange, a truth-telling journalist, by a load of slander from a known liar, a convicted paedophile, and a confidence trickster. Tells you all you need to know. But the fact that this still continues, despite the fact we know the key witness is on the record for saying that he fabricated the testimony. What happened is this case...
Phony justice! That's what it is! Phony justice!
This case started out, they tried to pretend that Julian Assange is not a journalist. That failed completely, because he's more journalist towards Julian Assange than you can shake a stick at. He's got more journalistic awards than virtually any other journalist. It's just poppycock. So what they did halfway through the case, after the deadline for submitting evidence, they just changed what they were charging him with. How on earth could that be justified? Thank you very much. And we're being helped out by Death here. Just Death is symbolising what's happened to British justice. We don't have British justice anymore. What has happened is the United States have decided they're just going to decree the outcome of any British case that's taking place when they want to put away someone who reveals their war crimes. That is what's taking place inside this court. It is nothing to do with justice. This is what is known as a war crime. This court is listening to the war criminals who find what Julian Assange has said inconvenient. Julian Assange has done more for the anti-war movement in informing us of war crimes than any other publisher in the world over the last 20 years. In fact, it's never been possible to publish as much information about war crimes as WikiLeaks has done, because Julian Assange is an incredibly intelligent and brave man, and he invented the technology that is now used by any serious newspaper to allow anonymity when people need to blow the whistle. He pioneered the idea. He invented it. It's inconvenient for the US, who want to carry on having wars because it makes certain people in the US, certain people who own arms companies, people who like making cluster bombs, people who like making drone missiles, it keeps them in luxury. This is what this is about. This is people who have no compunction about making the most disgusting weapons you can imagine. This is about keeping them in luxury. They don't want the inconvenience of the global anti-war movement. So what they do is they take the most shining example of a journalist, the bravest journalist they can find, and they're making an example of them. This, I hope people may find it blasphemous. It's a bit like the bloody crucifixion of Jesus Christ, isn't it? I mean, you take the best person, the person who tries to do the best for humanity, and you go and crucify them. This is like a crucifixion, and there's a reason for it. Crucifixions were done for a reason, and the reason for doing this is so no one dare do it again. They don't want anyone to publish details of their war crimes, so we want to make a really bad example of Julian Assange, show how cruel and callous they can be, and they want journalists to understand that, and unsurprisingly you will see a lot of self-censorship in the press now. If you look in the British media and you look at how this is reported, you have to look, well, how come a case as important as this has almost zero coverage in the press. Now, a few newspapers will put in a story just so they can pretend they've covered it. I read a story in The Guardian about Stella, but it was just a kind of human interest buff piece about the inconvenience of her perhaps being a single parent. It didn't mention that the key US witness is on the record of having fabricated the entire testimony that he gave. The man is a criminal. He's a child abuser, a serial child abuser. At least one compensation. Small compensation considering the misery and destruction, but now the US have locked him away. They allowed a judge who was being actually paid by the oil industry to make a decision that locked this brave man away. This is what you have. This is US justice. They're reeling it out. This was a case that was held in another country. They want their justice, if you could call it that. I wouldn't call it justice. They want their laws, their rules to apply to the whole planet. So there's no escape. You won't be able to raise your voice against them anywhere. I'm not talking about the US people. I've been to America and the US people are charming. But unfortunately, they've got a corrupt system for electing their leaders, and we've got really appalling people in positions of power and authority. We have Mike Pompeo. He says the WikiLeaks is a non-state intelligence, hostile intelligence agency. And he's 100% correct. WikiLeaks and the anti-war movement aren't hostile towards the American people, but boy are we hostile to the military-industrial complex in the United States. We do not want to see endless war. There's been enough war and killing. I've heard in Libya, we sent people into Libya, and now there are people, there are Africans in cages, and I heard that they're branded. They take a hot knife and they carve into their cheeks a number. That's a barbarity that we spread. It had one of the highest living standards of all of Africa. People had health care, they had education. Colonel Gaddafi may not have been the best leader, but the country was stable, people lived a reasonable life. Now there's slavery, with people having numbers carved into their cheeks while they're in a cage. European armies and navies patrol in the Mediterranean because they don't want the people fleeing the tyranny that's been spread by the US coming to Europe. They'd rather see the children drown. You've all seen the pictures of the children drowning. Parents weeping. They try to rescue their children from an unthinkable hell. And then you see the parents weeping on the beach with a child drowned. Because the Europeans wouldn't let them across the Mediterranean. They'd rather see them drown. This is horror. These war crimes are all hidden. Don't expect to see them on the BBC. I don't expect to see this on the BBC. This will not be broadcast on the BBC. That's why we need WikiLeaks. Without organisations such as WikiLeaks.
Yeah, well said.
How are we going to know what's going on? Everyone will live in a fake happy Teletubby land of false bullshit. We want to know what's really going on. British people, They want to see world peace, fair trade, justice. That's what we want. We need WikiLeaks. We need to know what's going on. And when something is being bad, is being perpetrated, then we can correct it. We can set up a judicial system. Maybe we could take over buildings like this, and we could run some form of justice inside of it. I think any one of us could dress up as a judge and do a better job of the jokers in there. But it's a very, very dark joke they're making. We are in a very dark place right now. Thank you very much. And we need to demand that Julian Assange is free. Free Julian Assange.
Free Julian Assange.
I will predict what's going to happen. We could wait for them to come out. Let's make a prediction what's going to happen. Now, it's too much of a political hot potato to drag Julian Assange away and put him in complete isolation in the United States of America. That would be controversial. Someone might have to print something. Even the BBC might have to say something about that. So he won't be extradited today, that's what I'm predicting. But I tell you what I am predicting. Those people in there haven't got the decency to say that he's an honest, innocent man, and they will find some way of stretching this out for another 3 months. So I say, oh, there's a real complication. Oh, somebody didn't dot an I, or maybe Odysee lied, but we haven't really got any proof. Or maybe we did spy on the people, but maybe we can write a new law in Parliament to suddenly make it okay now so we can carry on with it. There will be some old nonsense, and in another 3 months we're going to be back here again. They're going to go through the same facade all over again, and then I'll kick the can down the road again all the time, and the plan is to wait for Assange to die while this process is going on. The process is the punishment. This is a death sentence, what we're saying for Assange. He's not even inside there. He couldn't even come here. They've said they've never seen him look so ill. And they must, these horrible people from the US who love war, they must love that. The idea that he's slowly dying. Slowly dying in isolation. That's what they love. They love torture and misery. That's what they're doing to Julian Assange. And we need to stop them from doing it. It's great to see so many people here today. But I think really what we need to do is we need to organise. We need to get 10 times as many people. It needs to be such that it actually stops London from functioning. Next trial, what goes on in there is irrelevant. Nothing legal, who can make sense of a case where the only thing they've got to charge Assange with is a testimony of a known liar and paedophile. I mean, what kind of thing is that? What's going on there doesn't matter. What matters is we get people outside. When we get enough people outside, what's going on there is made public. It will become such an embarrassment. Then perhaps we will see Julian Assange free. I'm afraid that he's seen so much torment that I think he will need a very long recovery. I hope we can get back the brave, quick-witted Assange we had before. But I think it's going to take a long recovery once we get him out. He's a very brave man. But I will tell you one thing that Julian Assange has done with his courage. Whatever they do to him, he has pulled away the veil from their vile face.
Yes!
People who think it's okay to torture people. Extraordinary rendition means torture. It's not permitted by the UN. It's forbidden. It's one of the darkest things you can do. And there's a good reason why you don't torture. I'd like to say a few words about Craig Murray, who's very brave as well.
Oh, yes.
Now,
Yes.
Craig Murray got into trouble with the British establishment
Yeah.
because he became aware that the justification for the Iraq War was being made through evidence, so-called evidence, confessions from people that have been obtained under torture. Now the problem you have, if you torture people, you will say anything at all to stop the torture. You can make people say anything under torture. People have a limit, a pain threshold, probably a very high pain threshold for people like Assange, but there's a limit to what anyone can take. Now what Craig Murray uncovered when he was an ambassador for Uzbekistan was there was a family and they had, the woman had a husband and he confessed to being a member of Al-Qaeda, and he said that Iraq were helping Al-Qaeda. That man was known by Craig Murray, and he'd previously, a few weeks before, been a Jehovah's Witness. So it didn't really seem very credible that he'd had converted to an extreme form of Islamic radicalism. So Craig Murray went to the family house and they said they were forbidden to undo the coffin where the body was inside. And Craig said, well, as a British ambassador and diplomat, I'll open the box, the coffin, we'll look at the body inside, and we'll work out what's happened. I'll send some photos, we'll get UK forensics to work out what's happened. And they looked at the body, the top half was normal, bottom was all yellow, bloated, and they couldn't work out why. So they sent off these photographs to forensics. And UK forensics said, well, that looks like that man's been boiled in oil.
Oh!
So what they did to the man
Oh!
was they wanted him to confess, so they had fake evidence for Iraq, and imagine the violence. Imagine what it would be like if you knew someone was going to boil you alive in oil. They must have got hold of the person, they probably struggled. They'd have broken fingers and fingernails, what have you, while they shackled them up and attached them to a crane over a big vat of boiling oil. Then they'd lift them up slowly, protesting, saying, please don't do this. Imagine how you would protest if you knew that was going to happen to you. And then slowly, they'd lower him to the boiling oil and say, we want you to sign this piece of paper for Jack Straw so Tony Blair can go to war and kill hundreds of thousands of Iraqis and Halliburton can make a big fat profit from the oil. Now, free Assange, exactly. So, that all happened, and now Craig Murray broke the story on that. That's why we don't torture. That's why places like Guantanamo Bay are evil. Because that fake testimony, that allowed the Iraq War to take place. And Jack Straw knew that because Craig Murray wrote to him, telling him.
Another one.
He didn't want to listen.
No.
Because they'd already made up their mind. And in this case, I know that's exactly what happened. Judge Barrister, she went to the hearing, and at the end, she got out a pre-written copy of what she was going to read out. What is that? What kind of a judgment? You're allowing the prosecution to instruct what she was going to say. There is no justice here. We need to stand up for our rights, for press freedoms in the West, because very quickly we're going to lose them. This is the thin end of the wedge. Once Assange goes, who's next? We've got a whole range of journalists. They're going to be slowly silenced. Some of them will self-censor. Others will be locked up, like Craig Murray, like Julian Assange, and then we will fall into a darkness. This has happened in Europe in the 20th century. In the middle of the 20th century, this is precisely what happened. Everything that was done that was unpleasant in Europe was legal. What they did, what the far right did in Europe was legal because they changed the law. They had courts like this. They put people into the seats that they called judges. And they changed the law to make it legal what they did. And that's what we're going to see here in the UK. We see it already. Priti Patel wants to shut down protest. Priti Patel wants to make it. And if I stand out here telling you facts about this case, that our press are too cowardly to broadcast because they're frightened they'll be put into a place like this, like Julian Assange. Priti Patel wants to make it that one single person, they could bring one person along and say, that man with a loud hailer, he's annoying me, I want him to stop. And then the police will come and say, I must stop. I will say, but that's my personality, I will say, no, it's too important for me to stop. And they will say, well, you're arrested then. And it won't be a slap on the wrist, it'll be 18 months in jail. Who will stand up here where I am standing if every time they do it, they go for an 18-month jail sentence? Not very many people. It's possible I might try and do it once, but I doubt I'd do it a second time. Who's got 18 months to spare? What's going to happen to your house, your family, your career while you're in jail? That's what Priti Patel's putting through. So we're in really dire straits in the UK. We need to do something about this. Very, very fast. Julian Assange is an innocent man. He's uncovered untold number of war crimes. He's dedicated enormous part of his life. Even when he was in the Ecuadorian embassy, in asylum, he still made news programs. He still made news programs. He interviewed people. He stood up for what he believed in. I hope more British, well, he's not British, he's Australian, but I hope British people and Australian people from all around the world, can look at what Julian Assange has done and maybe emulate a tiny little bit of what he's done and show the same sort of courage and make sure we can have justice in the world where show trials like this are no longer permitted. So I'd like for everyone to shout, free Julian Assange! 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 Odysee lied! Odysee lied! Julian Assange's justice is denied! Odysee lied! Odysee lied! Julian Assange, his justice is denied! Thank you very much!
Thank you.